So in this tutorial, I'm going to be going over how to import CAD drawings into Revit and then setting up our grids and levels. So we're going to start out in Revit by opening up a new project. Now in this opening screen, you can either click on New here or click on the big A, New and New Project. So when this comes up, you want to click on Browse for the template. And we're going to choose Residential Default. So this will include a bunch of default objects, different types of walls and components that are used in the model when we first start out. So with that template selected, we're going to click OK. Now the way Revit is organized, at least when you first start out, is you'll have your Properties panel and your Project Browser on the left. Properties can be used to control whatever the element is that we're looking at right now. So right now we're looking at the view, and this is controlling the view settings. If we had a particular object in here, we could use that to adjust for that object. Then the Project Browser can show all the different views in our drawing. So we have all of our floor plans, some ceiling plans, 3D views, and elevations. Further down we have sheets once we get into that, and then schedules. Then once we make sections, those will also show up here. So I usually like to have my Properties panel on the right just so I can see everything instead of having it kind of halfway on the left, but you can choose to do it however you want. If you accidentally close any of these panels, so maybe something looks like this, you can go to View and then User Interface. Then we're going to check on the Properties and the Project Browser. So I want to clean up some of my floor plans before we get started here. So I want to get rid of the bottom of the footing, basement electrical, first floor electrical and framing, foundation, roof framing, second floor electrical and framing, and the top of footing. And I just used Control to select multiple of those plans. So to get our CAD drawings in here, we're going to go up to the Insert tab, and then I'm going to click on Import CAD. So I'm going to go find my file. So once you have your file selected, down here in the Colors panel, you can either preserve the colors or switch to black and white. I'm just going to switch to black and white because I don't need the colors for this assignment. Position, we're going to leave origin to origin, and then place at, I want to place it at our first floor. Click Open. Then you can see it opened our plan up here. So right now this would be our first floor plan, and this is our second floor plan. And I want to move our first floor plan over to the center of where all these elevation markers are. This is kind of the origin of our model is going to be right here. So normally by default when you import a drawing it is pinned, which means that you can't move it around. So if you click on the pin you can unpin it, and then you can drag that into the center of this area. So now that that's positioned, we can use our crop view to crop out everything except the first floor plan. So over in the Properties panel for our view, under Extents, you want to click on Crop View and Crop Region Visible. So this will put out this border here, then as you drag these corners around, you can see that it's cropping out that section of the view. And actually in this case, you can see it's cropping also the elevation marker, so I'm just going to click on the elevation marker and drag it inside over here. When I click on the triangle, will actually show us where that elevation is being cut. So this line right here. So we want this to be right around the front of the structure here. And I'm going to do the same with the elevation on the west side. So I'm going to click on the square. I can move the actual annotation closer. And if I click on the triangle, it'll show me that cut line. So I'm going to click on that and then drag it closer to our building. So then once I go back to our crop region, which is this big square, I can crop out this part of the floor plan, but I still have those elevation markers in there. And if I switch to my 3D view, I should see my drawing actually out in 3D space right here. So I want to go to my first floor plan, and then I want to copy this up to our second floor plan. So one way I can do that is click on the drawing in here, and if I go up to the clipboard section, once you have this selected, it'll go to the Modify panel under Clipboard, So copy to clipboard and then paste and align to selected levels. And then from here I can paste this to my second floor. So this will paste a copy of the plan up to our second floor, and if I go back to our 3D view, I should see basically a copy on the first or the second floor. I can then switch to my elevation view, and I can see basically where that first floor is set up at a height of 0, the second floor a height of 9, and then this line right here is actually the extent of our drawing. So you can see up in the properties that it's the beach house DWG file, and we have a copy of that above. So before I get into the levels here, I want to go back to our first floor plan and then set up a grid to go over our walls. And I can actually go back to our properties panel, click on crop region visible. So that'll get rid of that border there, but it's still cropping out the objects. So you can see just with the crop view, it'll crop out it, but will not have any border. And if you want to adjust it, you can turn the region back on, click on it, and then you can get those push pins on the 4 sides. So now to set up our grid, I want to go to the architecture panel and grid. So for this I want to draw a grid lines over the center of all of these column positions here. So as I move my cursor around, it should snap to the midpoint of this, indicating kind of the middle of that column. So that's what you want to look for, is when it changes into a triangle. So I'm going to draw the grid a little bit past here. And right now I started this on so this grid line, I started on this column, so I can click on it and then drag down so I can have this go past the building. Then if I don't want to have this marker up here that says 1, I can uncheck this, and I'm just left with our grid line. So to copy this to the next set of grids, I can click on our line, and then go up to our copy tool. Then one thing I can do is click on multiple, and I'm going to click on a base point to copy from. So I'm going to click right here where I know that it's centered roughly where this column is. And I can move it to the right, and I can also look for that triangle to lock it to the center of that column. Then I'm going to repeat over for this final column. And then for drawing the horizontal grid line, go to the Architecture tab, Grid. Then here we'll start drawing in this grid line over to the right. Again, I'll click on this. I'm just going to drag this out so it extends past the building, and then I'm going to uncheck the number 4 right there. Grab our copy tool. We're going to copy it down to the rest of our columns, like that. So we've got the grid set up for our first floor plan. And if you go to the second floor plan, you'll notice that the grid is also on this plan. So any grid you draw will show through all of your views, which is helpful because the structure is usually the same from one view to the other. Right now we have our floor plan, our imported DWG in here. We want to move our second floor plan over this because we're in the second floor plan view, and we don't want another copy of our first floor plan in there. So I can grab my Move tool up in the Modify panel. For this, I'm going to click on this part of the column because I know that's the center part, and I can reference that and move it over to here. So I've moved that over. All the columns seem to line up. And actually you can see that right now our underlay in the properties is set to our first floor. So I can actually see in gray, kind of grayed out in the background, a copy of our first floor plan. I can disable that if that's getting a little disorienting. Alright, so we've got that lined up. Then again, I can turn my crop view and my crop region on so I can crop out the rest of the drawing. So then if I switch back to my 3D view, I can see that the top floor plan has shifted, and now both our first floor plan and our second floor plan are aligned. Now, I wouldn't worry too much about these plans being shown on the 3D view now. As we keep drawing, we can hide them in here so that we can just see the structure that we're drawing. So then if you have additional floor plans, you can use the same principle to do that in those views. So I can take this plan, I could copy it, align to selected levels, and put it in the basement. Switch to my basement view. And for this, I actually want to line up this part of the drawing right here. So again, get my move tool, grab part of the drawing, line it up with the other part. And you can see right now that these columns are not lining up with this grid line, but I'm using the grid line here because the other two plans reference sort of the grid in this location, and this one is off, so I'm going to use it for the other two instead of just going with one and then changing the other two. Again, I can get my crop view, crop region visible turned on, and then just crop out the planes that I don't want. So to get a copy of the sectional drawing in one of our elevation views, so I'm going to go to any of your elevation views, click on kind of the line where you can see the drawing is. It'll just be this really thin line because right now we're only seeing it in an elevation view and it's in a plan orientation. So click on that and then get your copy tool, not the copy to clipboard, just the copy tool. And then we're going to copy it just way up above our drawing. So with that selected, I'm going to get rotate tool, and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. Then from here, I'm going to go over to our site plan view. So now we can see the drawings in the plan, and we can see this blue line here is the drawing in the elevation view. Then from here, since the section that we're looking at right here is in a north-south orientation, right now this line is oriented for like an east-west orientation, I'm just going to rotate it 90 degrees. Jump back to my north elevation, and I should see the drawings down here. So it's oriented a little bit off. Again, we can use a rotate tool. We'll rotate it 90 degrees up. And then in this view, you can see that we still have our top of footing, bottom of footing, and foundation levels in here, even though we deleted the views. So you can delete the views, but you can still end up with the level. So I'm just going to click on these levels, hit delete, so that we're just left with our first floor, basement, second floor, and roof. And in the case of this building, actually, it would be first, second, and third. In the case of this building, it would actually be the first floor, second, third, and then roof. So I'm going to adjust some of these. So for our basement, I'm just going to delete that right now, saying that the view basement will be deleted. That's okay. But each one of your houses will be different, so you have to adjust your levels accordingly to what your section data looks like. So right now I'm going to line up our plan here with our first floor. So we could use the move tool, but another tool we can use is the align tool. So again, in the modify panel, under align, so the first click is going to be where we want the object to move to. So we're going to click on our level 1, then the next click is the object that we want to move, which will be basically the top of this first floor. So I'm going to click on that, and that'll move our level, or move the object down to that level. So the second thing we want to do is align this with our grid lines. Now since we align the grid lines to the center of these objects, you can see that with these columns here, there's really nothing to snap to for the center. So one thing I can do is get my annotate tab, drag up in a detail line, and then say just connect two of these columns together, like that. So right now we'll have a middle reference point that we can use. So I'm going to click on the drawing, get my move tool, snap to the middle of that, and then move over to our grid line. So when we were looking at our floor plans before, I could see that two of them were lining up where the columns were on the first floor, but the ground floor plan wasn't. But I can see in this section view now that that's because one of the columns is shifted over like that. So one thing I'm going to do is, again, draw a detail line from one side of the column to the other, and I want to copy this column from this point to the middle. So we have an extra column on our ground floor to show where this column is, and then this column, or this grid line, is used to represent the columns up here. So now that we got that sorted out, so actually our first floor, which is our ground floor, actually should be at this level. So again, I can use my align tool, click on this level, and I'm going to click on this part of the house. That's going to move that up. And then we want to move our other levels up to the same height as this. So a quick and easy way of doing this is to click on our level, or actually click on the floor first, because that's where the object is going to go, and then click on the level. So that'll move the level up, and you can also see that it moved our drawing up. If you use tab, you can cycle between the level and the drawing, because the drawing is connected to that level, and we moved the level up. So I'm going to repeat the same process for this. I'm going to select the top of this floor, then this grid. So you can see right now the reason why it's moving up is because this section is aligned to our roof, and we're trying to move the roof up, so it's going to move with that level. So I could change it to say my first floor, and again we'll shift the whole thing again, but then I can use align tool and align that with our first floor. So then now I should be able to go and align my roof level to the drawing. So right now our roof level is set to basically where our third floor is, so instead of trying to move the level up, I'm just going to rename it to third floor. And I usually like to have my levels named instead of first, second, third, like 01, 02, and 03. Now the reason for that is Revit sorts the floor plans and any of these names alphabetically, so in this case, first, second, third, these will be in alphabetical order, and this one will come first up in the floor plans, but if you put in a fourth level in here and call it fourth floor, that'll be grouped right next to the first floor because they both start with F. So it's a little bit easier if you just name it some type of number here, and then I would say, do you want to rename the corresponding views? Click yes, so you can see that changed the name of the view up in the floor plans. We're going to do the same for the second floor. Again, for our third floor. For some reason, this didn't change the name of the roof plan up here, so I'm just going to delete our roof plan. I'm going to go up to View, click on Plan Views, and then click on the third floor. So I'm going to go back to my north elevation, and I'm going to copy this level basically up to the top of this. So for your roof level, you could put a different level on, say, this side of the roof versus up here, but right now I'm just going to leave one level on one of these roofs. So I'm going to change this, and I'm actually going to change it to O floor roof, just so when we go to our floor plan view, I'm going to make a new view, call it O4 floor. They'll basically all show up in order, so 1, 2, 3, and 4. Switch back to my north elevation. So if you wanted to take it a step further, you could do another level, and for this we could do the bottom of the footing. So we've got that line there. I'm going to change this to actually 0, 0, bottom of footing. So I like to use these numbers just so it's a little easier to organize them in your floor plan views. So again, we can even do another plan view of this. So now you can see 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. They're all nicely lined up. But now since I started with the second floor plan on the first floor view, I want to change that. So if you go to our second floor view, I'm basically going to take this and cut it. And then I'm going to paste it aligned to selected levels to our third floor. Then jump back to the first floor. This I'm actually just going to do a copy, paste it up to our second floor. Alright, so we should have the second floor is lined up. You can see there it's lined up with those columns. Third floor is lined up that column grid with those columns. Since we didn't set up the crop region on this, I'm going to set that up now. So turn on crop region and then just crop out drawings you don't need. Then I'm going to turn off our underlay, so we're just seeing this drawing. So our second and third are set up, but now our first floor plan still has our second floor view. So I'm going to uncheck the crop region, then I'm going to take our first floor over here, then I'm going to move this over and line it up with our grid. Alright, so that is lined up, and you can see these columns roughly line up here. They don't line up here, but they line up in the section. So I'm actually going to adjust this grid line so that it lines up with the center of the column in the plan instead of in the section. Then from here I'm going to turn my crop region on in the crop view. That should automatically pick up the crop region of the last view. And I'm just going to drag this out a little bit so I can see the edge of the plan. Like that. So for our roof plan, I'm going to set my underlay to the third floor. Turn on crop region so we just see this plan. But you can see that we don't see our grid lines, and the reason for that is if I go into one of our elevation views, that actually the top of those grid lines for the plan don't extend above our level, so I'm just going to pull these up a little bit like that. Going back to the roof plan, so now we should see them. But actually we see those levels, but we don't see the other ones, so I'm going to switch to like an east view, then grab these, pull those up. Still going back, so now we should have basically all of our levels here. Just a few more things. So in our first floor plan, so you can see we have this grid line line up with this column, but this one is used for the levels above. So if I don't want to see that, I can just right click on it, go to hide in view and elements, so I can hide that grid line. Go up to the second floor, I can do it again, but do it for the other grid line because we're using this one to line up with this column. Again, our third floor, I'm going to hide this grid line. And then in our roof plan, not that it matters that much, but I'm just going to hide this grid line. So that's the end of this tutorial. On the next one, I'm going to be covering how to put in floors, walls, and roofs.